بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لن تنالوا البر حتى تنفقوا مما تحبون صلوات. Mu'minin, we gather here on the fifth night commemorating the ultimate sacrifice humanity has seen forever and ever. And it is indeed in light of this ayah of the Holy Quran that we keep remembering that never shall you achieve righteousness unless you give something out of that which you love. The idea is not just giving, as we explained yesterday. The idea is giving something that you love. And Karbala taught us that when you give your all for a cause. The cause was the cause of reform. The cause was the cause of change in society. And when Imam leaves Medina, he declares that I am leaving Medina for the Islah of the Ummah of my grandfather. And we've heard this often enough, the Islah. And the whole idea in this series of lectures has been to explore and bring about a yardstick that Islah in the Ummah. Where do we stand on a scale of 1 to 10 on the Islah that Imam al-Islam was going for? Have we reached anywhere near 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or higher? It's a matter of muhasibah, it's a matter of us doing some introspection to say where we are as the Ummah. And in particular, those of us who profess to follow the Aimma alayhimus salam and the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. This is the call of time, because when Imam alayhi salam turned in 4 different directions, when everybody had gone, and he said, Hal min nasirin yansurna, who was he calling out to? All the companions who were to give their lives were dead. He was calling out to all of us for all the time until eternity to say, is there any helper who is going to help me? He was calling out by proxy, by any oppressed person anywhere to say, is there anyone out there who is going to help me? And this is a continuum of that trend or that trail of reform as we move through. The question we're asking is, how do we go beyond the rituals and become catalysts for change? So 3 operative words are being used here. One is rituals, catalysts, and change. 3 things. And as has been the custom over the last 4 days, that this is a series of 5 topics, that the first day is theory, the second day is some practice, some light relief on the second day. This is the first day of some heavy thinking, Mu'minin. So please stay with me. We looked at the event of Karbala in the context of a multicultural society. We looked at the idea of religious harmony. How can it possibly lead to peace for humanity? And today we're going to talk about how do we go beyond the rituals to becoming catalysts for change. And inshallah we'll continue. So Allah says in the Quran, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. That Allah does not change the condition of a people, of a society, unless they make that change within themselves. And in the next set of lectures, we will discuss more in terms of change and transformation. What is the difference between change and transformation? Something worth thinking about, because we talk about change. Everything continues to change. Right now, what is the time, Bashir? 8:51. So it's 8:51 right now. It was 8:50 a minute ago, right? It changed. Nothing stays constant. 8:50 will never come back. We're all in a state of change. Our bodies are in a state of change. So to ask for change is to ask for something very natural. The idea is everything continues to change. The issue is, what is that change? And at the same time, there are certain things, like the minute passing, we have no control over. There are certain things in terms of change that we have control over. And may God give us the wisdom to distinguish between the two as to things that we can control and the things that we cannot control. And when it comes to change, it reminds me of this oft statement to say you are either on the table or you are at the table. If you are at the table, then you can make a difference. If you are on the table, you become the menu and you get eaten up. Therefore, we have a choice whether we want to adopt change or we want to bury our heads in the sand like the ostriches do. By the way, when I said that last time at some other place, and a 9-year-old came to me and he said, "Uncle, that's not a fact. Ostriches actually don't do that." They don't bury their heads. Has anybody ever seen? But it's now become a statement which has been repeated so many times, it's also become a truism. But I can still use it because it's a matter of conveying. Whether they do it or not, we do. That we bury our heads in the sand sometimes and we cannot anticipate change, or we are too stubborn to accept change. So either we are, adopt to change or we refuse change. We're going to have to change and move on. Or as reformers, as the followers of Abu Abdullah, Imam Hussain alayhi salam, can we actually become agents of change? That's when we are at the table and not on the table. And if we understand the cause and the effects of what we do and what we do not do, then there is a chance that we might actually become agents of change. So now, since the subject is of rituals, I will not go into what are rituals, but why rituals. Why are rituals important? So firstly is to pinpoint that identity and enhance that feeling of affinity to our faith. Rituals are needed. We have a ritual here. The MC comes here and she says some wonderful things to get us all back into attention. It's a ritual. It's a necessity. The idea of an MC in any gathering is a ritual. It has a purpose. We know what it's about. Also, there is other definition in terms of why rituals, that if we have this sustained verbal, practical repetition, they actually produce an impact on our mental, sensory, emotional, and rational substance. They have an impact. When you make that tasbih, the limbic system is receiving certain messages, depending on how we're doing it. But if it has become just a mechanical thing while I'm thinking about the stock market and saying, Alhamdulillah, 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 the stock market is going up and down, then perhaps the limbic system is is it the left or the right? The left side of the brain, right? The left side, yes. Thank you. The left side of the brain is thinking. The right side of the brain is quiet, because that's where those perceptions are. So it's creating the unique conformity of the interior and the exterior, meaning that it's within you and outside that you're actually able to bring your senses into equilibrium. And that really is one of the reasons why we have these rituals. At the same time, when you look at rituals at a social level, they can actually help us create a state of some kind of constancy, that we come to the majlis, we expect to be behaving in a certain way. We, as a ritual, there used to be a time And things change. But there used to be a time that no person would generally go into Eastern societies, even now so sometimes, without wearing a cap on their head. It was a ritual, a respect to the majlis, that people would not enter the Imam Barga without a cap. Now even the preachers have lost their cap. It was a ritual, it was something that was customary, it was a tradition. But people expected a certain thing. Now that expectation has changed. There are different societies. I go recite in Paris, for example, and the expectation is totally different when you enter the Imam Barga. The dress code is at the minimum business casual, no jeans. No jeans in the Imam Barga, it's unheard of. This is the culture that prevails in the community in Paris. When I was reciting, I was told by the organizer that can you please have at least 4 salawats in the first 15 minutes? And I said, I don't even have 4 salawats in the whole majlis. And I said, but why? And they said, people will not enter the Imam Barga unless you have said a salawat, because they don't want to disturb the preacher. So when you say salawat, people will enter. Those who are late will wait until there is a salawat before they enter. This is the kind of respect and the decorum. It's all kind of rituals that we practice. Each society has its own to have a certain kind of public harmony in both the individual and the society. And there can be many examples where you do this. In the field of education, for example, rituals will create certain customs that will help us manage certain behavior. You go to school, you go to college, there is a ritual. Whatever that ritual may be, it allows us to organize people. And then in terms of social relations, we come together, the namaz that we have, the collective prayers, namaz al-Jama'at that we have, it's a collective thing that we do. There is an expectation. It's a spirit of collective responsibility, of mutual understanding, and cordiality amongst people who come together. There is an energy that comes together. We could watch all these majalis on YouTube, some of us do. This is being streamed, and now you have sites that you'll have 1,001 majlises you can actually pick and choose, or surf channels like we do on TV to say, okay, here it is. But coming together within a setup like this is a ritual. So when we think of it, there are certain rituals that we need to understand are necessary. There are others which need to be questioned. But they actually provide the doctrinal content and intellectual and moral concepts when we have certain rituals and we are bound by rituals. The majlis is a ritual. The 10 days of Muharram is a ritual. And there are benefits, and there are also, where you have not understood the essence, then it's something that is questioned to say, we're doing this, we've been doing this for 80 years, now what? What's going to happen? So, our commitment to culture and family, our sense of belonging is strengthened through a shared experience when you have a ritual of this nature. So there is a definite advantage. And these boundaries, which are set by rituals, allow us to have the freedom of having a safe environment within which we can express our conflicting emotions and handle, that ambivalence that we have within us. Imagine and I've been through twice at least, imagine the wedding of a daughter. It's a ritual in some ways. There's an ambivalence when your daughter is getting married, in particular. When the daughter is getting married, you're happy on one side. On the other side, you have a mixed feeling of great sadness. It's a ritual that you go through, and you are going through these emotions, but that ritual encompasses my ambivalence of being happy or being sad. There are many examples as to what one can do. The power of a ritual has been studied scientifically too. The brain activity of volunteers who are reading sort of heavily technical material was different when he was measured as compared to when the same people were reading that folklore or fairy tales where different parts of their brain were activated. It's a matter of how. So if you're deeply, involved, and then you're truly imbibing the tasbih, or you're imbibing Zarat Ashura, truly, with every focus in your mind, there is a chemistry in your brain that is working, which is going to get you, which is going to be beneficial. And these are the values of rituals. Enough of that science. Before I lose, because this is not a scientific lecture, that rituals have a relation with culture. Rituals are not in isolation. For example, the rituals that we have in our traditional Indo-Pak societies of the Shabi and the Alam, for example, is particularly towards the Indo-Pak culture, the way we do it. When you go to other societies, like the Persian society or the Arab society, their rituals of Azaa are different. Why? Because this is culturally contained. The idea of the Shabi and the Alam and the Tabut as we know it did not originate from Sham or Najaf or Karbala. It actually emanated in the subcontinent. At the time of Taimur the Lame, Taimur had numerous wives, the favorite one being a Shia, and they used to go for Arba'in Ziyarat every year. And one year, because of war, they could not go. And she was very sad to say, I cannot pay my respects for Arba'in to Aba Abdullah. And the Wazir advises the king to say, why do you not have replicas of these so that the Begum can do her mourning and she can pay respect and pay tribute? Our tradition of the Taziyah, the way we know it, actually started from that. And that is something that moves on. To say that this is what we've imbibed within a culture. It is a good thing if we have truly understood the meaning of those alams. That, there are certain voices amongst us to say, well, is this worship? Well, it is not worship. If we truly understand the essence of it, it is just like the Kaaba is Sha'irullah, that it reminds us it is not where God lives, but we pray towards the Kaaba, we circumambulate around the Kaaba, we do the tawaf. The Kaaba is a sign. It is Sha'irullah, which reminds us of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we look at the alam, it reminds us of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, who in turn reminds us of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The idea is to understand and explain. But if you have never done it, then these questions come to mind to say, are these rituals, are they going to hinder us? Are they going to be good for us? So what we need to do is that every ritual that is connected with culture. So first, what we need to do is identify which culture do we belong to before we question rituals. An Arab attending a typical Indo-Pak majlis would be horrified, if he didn't know us as much, would be horrified to say, what is this happening? What is happening here? And it has happened in multicultural societies where Shia Arabs who have come to our majlises have been aghast to say, what are these people doing? But if they understood our culture, then they would not be asking that question. So first we need to determine that rituals are connected to culture. And these are cultural things, not all of them. There are certain universal rituals. Salat is one of them. Hajj is another. These are rituals, and that's a different philosophy. But when you are talking about certain rituals, as we understand them, they are connected to culture. And therefore, if rituals are a product of culture, then we need to determine, and we need to have the wisdom to determine which ones of those are permanent and which ones are transitional. At the same time, we need to determine the relevance of those rituals. And you need to look at the cause and the rationale of those rituals. And this is how we need to approach the idea as to which rituals are those that need to be followed, which rituals are there that need to be discarded. So if this is related to culture, and I crave your attention here, then we have been talking about a multicultural society that we live in. We spent 2 days discussing multiculturalism and our role in that multicultural society. This is an extension of that thinking, that this is an attractive notion. And we need to think and describe and understand who we are when we live in this multicultural society. A human being whose identification and loyalties transcend the boundaries of ethnicity and nationalism. This is a multicultural human being that we find in our societies, whose commitments are pinned to a larger vision of the global community. And thirdly, he is a citizen, or she is a citizen of the world, an international person, and has long been a person who would like to strive towards that idealism. This is a person who is a multicultural individual. In our lives, if we're living in a multicultural society, then what is that influence that is upon us, where it is now going to structure our values? We live in this society. It is going to sort of engineer our view of the world and the patterning of our responses to experiences, as to how we react. We have a different way of thinking, many of us, when we migrated over to the Western world. We evolved. For the better or for the worse is a matter of judgment. And that's not the controversy I'm going to get into. Because that's not, all I'm saying is that we evolved and we changed. Why? Because the multicultural society around us made sure that there was a change in us. We cannot hold ourselves apart from the cultural influence of the land and the society that we live in. I'm still on the subject of rituals, but unless we understand the culture, and nobody is culture free, we have to have some kind of culture. As human beings in a society, we need to have some kind of a culture. I call this era the WhatsApp era. My mother is 90 years old. She used to watch majlises on TV. She used to have her video cassettes, and she still has a player. But you know what now? She's on WhatsApp, and she's watching them on YouTube. She has evolved. In fact, she now spends less time watching majlises and more time on WhatsApp. True. And now she can actually do WhatsApp in the Gujarati language too. So she's good. I mean, she's getting all these messages. The idea is that it is not just the younger generation who has been impacted by social media. This is the era of social media, WhatsApp. And as a society, all of us are on a threshold of a new kind of person that we see. And I have a point to make. That is why I'm taking you through this journey. That a person who is socially and psychologically a product of the interweaving of cultures in the 20th century is a different person. And this space is going at such a fast pace because social media has now brought us so much closer to. Good, bad, ugly, whatever it is, the fact remains that we are become much more of a global society which is changing the norms in our homes, in our societies, in our masjids. Wherever we look, it is changing norms. So, we are an international society now. I wake up in the morning, the Japanese alarm actually wakes me up. I wake up from my Malaysian bed, I drink my Kenyan coffee, I have my waffle with, guess what, Canadian maple syrup, I wear my Indonesian shirt, I drive to work in a German car, I use a Chinese computer in the office, I go for a Lebanese lunch, and my day is only half over. This is a society that we live in. It's a globally interconnected society, and the sooner societies realize that we are one big humanity, we have common shared values and interests. So we need to realize that as international citizens now, there is a responsibility that we have. So now you have this multicultural family. Look at the paradox here. You have a Canadian family who decorates their home with sculptures and paintings imported from Pakistan, while teenagers in Pakistan pay unheard prices to buy used American blue jeans. This is kind of going around, and we are so interconnected. While Malaysian physicians inoculate a remote village against, for example, typhus, Western medics are now going to study Ayurvedic medicine and acupuncture. Everything is kind of now getting integrated. So this vignette, this picture that we paint is a symbol of the melding and the coming together of human cultures. But whatever it may be, as I said, we have a new kind of person whose orientation and view of the world profoundly transcends their indigenous culture. None of us can continue to remain within the indigenous culture any longer. It could even be, WhatsApp has got to the villages of Tanzania, where I was born. The social media is impacting everyone. Slowly but gradually, these changes are coming. So, developing from the complex of social, political, economic, and the educational interactions of our time is heading towards a global society. So we now have a new vocabulary. The conception of somebody who is an international person, a transcultural person, a multicultural person, or an intercultural person. Essentially, they all attempt to define somebody whose horizons extend significantly beyond his or her own culture. This is the way of the world. This is where the world is going. Now it's up to us. Are we at the table or are we on the table? Are we going to join this journey? Are we going to resist this journey? The choice is ours, as a community, as a society. Now, the multicultural person is always in a state of flux. We're trying to deal with that. And more so, our young are trying to deal with that. We may have certain comfort zones that we may not move because the progression in the corporate world doesn't really matter. Some of us have gone over that Rubicon and we're okay. But when you look at the younger generation, they're having an even harder time. If you think you're having difficulties, imagine what is happening to the millennial and the upcoming generations. This is why our young are becoming what I call unmosqued, because they're not coming here. Now I'd like us to think about the idea of rituals and the relevance of the rituals of our faith and how are they going to fit into that mind. Inshallah, that will be explored tomorrow to say, how do we come to some level of accommodation of living and raising a multicultural generation from here? It doesn't matter whether you're in Canada or you're elsewhere in the world. This thing is coming to all of us. Some people think that this is a Western influence. We used to say in the old days, oh, this is Coca-Cola culture that is pervading the Eastern society is so bad. Well, when you look at, and we compared multicultural Canada and the Islamic values that we have in Canada, and we looked at other Muslim societies, and it was very clear to us that the majority of the Islamic values happen to be right here, not in Muslim countries. So the idea of that Coca-Cola culture was just a subterfuge, or we did not see through it. So this is something that we need to consider as to what we are going to do. Now that we talk about rituals, I just wanted to share one perspective just to give us a spiritual uplift. Because somebody asked the Blessed Prophet, and I'm talking about rituals. This is one of the most important rituals that we have. Salat that we have. someone asked the Blessed Prophet, to say, what is more important than prayer? And he said, the spirit of prayer. The spirit of prayer. So when we are looking at rituals, this is not something that I will go on the janamaz, on the musalla, on the prayer mat, finish it as quickly as I can, and say, thank you, I've just finished my duty. My duty done, I can now go on doing whatever I want to do. The ritual, if we truly understand the essence of the ritual, the proverbial perfume bottle that I've been talking about, if that is opened, then you can have that scent, the profound ritual. That this is a ritual of purification. The wuzu that you make. And there are du'as as you're making that wuzu, to get you in a frame of mind of not just physical cleanliness, but a ritual purity as we begin our prayers. How many of us truly think about it? I'm included in that. I'm equally guilty. Because in the fast-paced life that we lead, we want to get on with it and finish our prayers as quickly as we want to. But that the water of that wuzu, if you feel that drop of water cleansing you spiritually, and then you turn towards Makkah, you get ready for prayers. Makkah is our Qibla because it was the heart of monotheism, of Tawheed of Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam. As we face that ritual becomes a spiritual journey of saying that I believe in monotheism, that there is no deity. When I have said La ilaha illallah, when the Blessed Prophet said Kulu la ilaha illallah tuflihu, then there is no other authority that is going to put me down because I have been liberated now. That is what we are facing, mu'mineen. And then when we stand up, when we lift our hands to say takbir, what are we saying? If we say this to ourselves, that this upward motion that we have, the palms facing forward, the inauguration of the prayer is symbolic in saying, I've lifted my hand, all the worldliness has gone behind me, I'm here. This is my state of mind, that I am now removing myself from the environment that I am in the presence. As I related, somebody was observing Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam praying, and his clock kind of just slipped below his shoulder. Normally our inclination is to quickly adjust it, and Imam did not. And somebody asked Imam to say, why did you not adjust your clock? And he said, do you realize in whose presence I was standing? When the Aimma alayhimus salam used to stand in prayer, they used to weep, they were masoom. But it was that love, that compassion towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we go into ruku, and please, there are so many scholars who have written wonderful commentaries, mystical commentaries about the prayers. Take some time to read that, to imbibe us with that spirit, so when we pray, we remember some of this. That the mind is over the heart when you go into the ruku. The mind, when you go into ruku, you bow down. Your head is below your heart. That is a symbolism of that ruku that we are making and the zikr that we do. It's also a preparation for the day of resurrection, where we'll have to stand accountable. And the sujood that we have, that after that, we go down, we fall into prostration. You know, Imam Ali alayhi salam described this beautifully, to say that the first prostration is to remind you that you came from the earth. And then when you sat and you went down again, Imam said, that is where you will be buried. Remember your qabr. And then when you come back again from the sajda, you will be resurrected. This is what the Prophet meant when he said that what is more important than prayer is a spirit of prayer.